There was a question that was submitted during registration, so I'll answer that one, and then we will jump in. So the question was related to the Markdown widget, which we're covering today. Can we create page breaks, header and footer, define or remove margins, update the page format like A4 instead of letter, and orientation? And unfortunately, you cannot do those with the Markdown widget. It does have its limitations. It can make some pretty forms, but unfortunately, those specific items you can't do. In the future, we've talked about different projects to create kind of like a PDF viewer or something. So I'll share these different ideas with our team so I know what you're interested in terms of forms. So I will pass all of that information on. And then we did have another, more of a comment than a question that just said, love to see what you guys have developed. And so if you were here last month, you already saw this. If you've read the newsletters, you've seen this. But we do have record cards now. And so it's like if you have a record selected, and like for this particular table, we only have 3 columns shown, and you want to see all of the data for this record, you can click this little arrow. It's just by the row number, and then view as card. The keyboard shortcut for this too is the space bar. So if you just want to quickly hit the space bar, it'll pop up as well. But it'll show you all of the column details for that selected record. And what's really cool about it is you can do this with reference columns too. So this is just a view of our projects table. And the customer column is a reference column noted by this little link icon. And when you click the link now, it pulls up that referenced record. And so I can see that customer's information all in this little card view. And those record cards are editable. So if you wanted to go into raw data, that's where you would go to edit those. And then along the right, you see these little cards. Just click edit record card. You can rearrange columns or fields and modify it to your heart's content. And just click save. And then now when I look at that record card, that one was customers. It's in the format that I just set. Now let's say you have a data table that's only a single column and you don't feel like the record card is useful, or maybe you just don't want to confuse people. You can disable a record card as well. Click the 3 dots, again, we're in the raw data section, and then you would just disable, and then it's no longer available until you come back and enable it. So the other thing I wanted to point out quickly is our add new menu, which you may have seen if you guys have been playing in Grist. It's pretty obvious. When you click the plus icon to add a column, you have all of these options now. You can add a type, so you don't have to go back into the creator panel to update the type. You can add a formula column, so immediately opens that formula editor. You can quickly add a hidden column. And if you have a lot of hidden columns, you can search for it. You can add lookups, so related data in other tables. And then we have a couple shortcuts down here as well. We do have an article in the Help Center. Just search add new or add new column. And I go through each of these options there. So you can learn a little more about the lookups, different shortcuts available. Okay, so let's jump into the actual webinar. First off, Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome to our January webinar. So last month we covered our many multimedia widgets. including the map, the notepad, the image viewer, and the video player custom widgets. So you can find a recording of that webinar along with all of our previous webinars on YouTube. You will find a recording of this webinar there in the near future. Because you are registered for the webinar, you will receive an email almost immediately following the completion of our webinar with a link to the recording. So our webinar today continues our focus on views, but in particular, we are going to focus on the Markdown widget. So today we're going to learn how to create custom forms using our Markdown widget. And we'll actually be following along with an example from our Help Center. Let me see if I can share the link to that. Because of the little technical difficulties today, I'm not sure if it's showing up, so I'm going to recreate it. Give me just a second here. Okay, so there should be a link on your screen now. That is the example walkthrough. We're going to cover so many steps today with it. It's impossible to remember it all. Save this link to reference in the future. It covers all the same steps that we will today. Now, for today, I'd recommend simply following along with the webinar. So if anything is unclear, you can ask questions. And then when you're working through your own forms, you can use this walkthrough as a guide. It's all the same steps. It's very thorough. So it should be able to help get you through. So we'll just take a quick look at the template. Or actually, let me show you what that guide looks like. Give me just a second here. I'll pull it up just to give you an idea. So it is just a step-by-step guide. It has links to the Markdown custom widget, help article, which that's the widget we're going to see today. It also has a link to the template, and that's what we're about to just get a little preview of. And then it's step-by-step, how do you do this? So this is the template that's linked in that guide. We'll be building out a portion of it, not to completion, but enough to really give you an idea of how to create the templates, how to populate it with data. So the proposals and contracts template here contains customer and project details for a lawn mowing business. Here on this customers page, we have our table of customers. When we select customer, we have their data or their information in this customer's card. And then we have projects for each of those customers linked via a reference column. Here on the proposals page, we have our table of projects. When we select a project, this proposal card updates with specific proposal details. And our preview over here, this is a Markdown widget here on the right, that updates to show the proposal for the selected project. Now throughout the template, we have these little yellow instruction boxes. There's a lot happening in this template. That's why we have the walkthrough. The instructions are just to help guide you, to help you understand what everything is doing, what's it all for. But hopefully with this webinar, it helps make everything even more clear. So when you update something in this proposal card, I'm just going to change proposal date to today. It automatically updates in this preview. So you would type in all your proposal details over here in the card. Your proposal on the preview on the right would update to reflect all of those details. And what's cool is you can actually print the widget or save it as a PDF. You click these little 3-dot icons and click print widget. You get this lovely preview and you can save it as a PDF. You can send it to a printer. And so that's a really nice a feature of the Markdown custom widget, and it's just easy way to create a PDF that you will format. Now we do have this contracts page. It's basically the same thing, but it's using another template to create a form here. Now those templates live on the templates page. And again, we're gonna go through the steps of how to create this. So we have a proposal template here, contract template here. Now this is very generic. Anywhere with details that are specific to a project or using a variable that is then populated to fill in that information. And last but not least on this template here, we do have a how to build your proposal page. And this just draws attention to the formula column that we use. So this is the projects table that contains all the project information. This formula column populates that template with this project's information. And that's how we create that preview. So now we are going to build the templates out from scratch. We'll populate them with project data and customer data so you can understand each of the steps in this process. Okay. So to start, we already have our table and our projects table. I'm just gonna work on a copy. There we go. So customer data all lives in the customer table. And then our projects data lives in the projects table. Each project is linked to a specific customer via this reference column. Now, because we already have our data table set up, our next step is to create our templates. So we'll create a templates table. We'll add new. We're going to do this on a new page. We're creating a new table, and we'll call this templates. Now this table only needs 2 columns. We need a name for our template. And then we need a column for the Markdown widget to read and write to. We're just going to call this template formatting. And it's going to store all that information for us. And then we'll just delete this extra column. Now, right off the bat, I know we're going to create 2 templates. So we'll have the proposal template and then contract template. Now we need to add our custom widget. To do that, we just click Add New. We're going to add a widget to the page. Select Custom. It's a custom widget. And then we select the data table that's going to contain the data for our widget, which is the templates table. That's where we're going to store the template data. And then last but not least, we want to select by that same table. So for example, when we select proposal in the table, the custom widget shows the proposal. And then we need to configure our custom widget. Here in the Creator panel, under our Custom tab, we just find our Markdown custom widget. It will tell us that it needs full access to this document because it needs to both read and write to the column that we tell it to. So we're going to accept that. And then the last step is to create or select the content column. So what column is it reading and writing to? And we're going to select template formatting. So this is the column it's reading and writing to. So if I type into template formatting, it can read that. Now if I edit directly into this, and save, it writes to that column. I would recommend only editing in your custom widget. So you can just hide this column from view. go ahead and click edit. So there's a couple options already at the top. You have the option to bold text, italicize. You can create headings. So let me show that off. So you can click it a bunch of times. You click it once, that's heading 1, H1. Click it twice, and it'll keep going down until it goes back to a standard paragraph. You have the quote option. You also have create a link. If you're not familiar with Markdown, there's this really handy Markdown guide. All you do is click this question mark icon, and it opens the Markdown guide. Now it opens it to the basic syntax page, which has tons of helpful information. Here on the right, you can see the different sections. So if you're like, I really want to know how to add images, you click images and it will describe how to do that with Markdown. Now, note that you can use HTML in our Markdown widget. There is a little section down here on HTML within the Markdown guide. Just be sure to read through it. There's some notes on how to separate different HTML elements from Markdown. So just keep that in mind. If you're more familiar with HTML, you can do it. You can combine both. We'll actually do a little bit of both today. And then one more thing I want to point out in this guide. Scroll all the way back to the top. Next to basic syntax up here is the extended syntax. And that's just even more features of Markdown. And so, for example, one of the things that we're going to use today is tables. I use the section on tables and how to create a table in Markdown. So if you're not familiar with Markdown, don't let it intimidate you. It's quite easy to use, especially using the Markdown guide that's linked. Again, that's just clicking this little question mark box, and it'll take you to that page. So we can start with creating our proposal. Now in our template, we see that we have this cute little image of a lawnmower. When I click edit, we see the HTML that's used to add that image to our Markdown widget. I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. Because if the code already exists, just copy paste it. It's so much easier. All you have to do is change out this source URL to your own image, and it'll replace it. You can change the position, you can change the size. I'll go ahead and save that. So now we got our little logo. And now we actually want to start typing our form. So first off, I know I need a header. And I can go ahead and save that and see how it looks. Looks great. Now, if you are not familiar with Markdown and don't know to use the 2 pound signs to set heading to, you can just type it normal, highlight it, click the header, and select which heading size you want. Now, next in our form is we have a little table. So I can show you that over here. So here you've got this little table that shows the project name, and then it has the variable for project name. And so that's what we're creating next. And again, the information for table was in the Markdown guide. So you can just copy paste it from there. I'm going to copy paste it from my cheat sheet over here. So this creates a 2-column table. And in my first column, I've got project name, it's bolded. And now I need to put a variable in. So the things that you're typing in that are not variables are things that are standard across all of your projects, all of your proposals, but anywhere that the details change for each project or customer, that's the stuff you're going to be adding as a variable. I would recommend adding your table to the page. So for example, we're going to be populating this with project information. So I'm going to add the project table just at the bottom of my page so I know what data is there. But most importantly, I know what the column IDs are so I can use them for my variables. Now we see that my little table disappeared. I didn't click save. Always remember to click save, otherwise it'll delete stuff. So that's why I recommend saving every once in a while, just so you don't accidentally click away and lose it. Luckily I had it on copy paste, so I could just re-add it. Okay, so to add a variable, you need these little squiggly brackets. And then between the brackets, you are going to add your variable. Now, project name is a column in my projects table. Here we see it right here. And I want to fill the variable in with whatever is in this column. And so I want the column ID. Just double click the header, and then you'll see the column ID listed. When you click on that, it copies the column ID to the clipboard. And you can use your keyboard shortcut, Control-V, Command-V to paste. Just keep in mind, you have to delete the $. When you're using column headers or column IDs in formulas, it needs that $. So it automatically copies that. For this particular thing, creating variables, you don't want it. So just be sure to delete. Now the next two things, customer name, customer address. Technically, you see the customer name here in the customer column, but it is a reference column. And with reference columns, they store the record ID. So although we see the name, it's storing the ID. And what we need to do is actually just create a generic variable that represents the information we want. And then at a later step, we're going to build this into our formula to find that information elsewhere in the document. So for now, I'm just going to create a variable, customer name. Again, just make sure it's something that's very obvious. Customer address is going to be our one for customer address. And we're going to come back to that and how to populate these in a few more steps. So last but not least, we need to actually fill in the body. So here we've got some text. I just need to populate it again with more variables. Proposal date, find that column, copy the ID. Here we've got customer, and that's going to be the customer name. And so I want to use that same variable I used before for customer name, so that when I set up that variable in our formula, it correctly maps to both of those. It'll make it easier. And then finally, we just need a proposal end date here. Find that column, copy the ID, and paste it. Not forgetting to remove the $. Now I'm just going to copy paste the rest here. And so I've got my headers, and then I've got my variables that are going to be pulling data from those columns. So like service details is down here. It would take the information from that cell and enter it where we see the variable. And so that is the rest of my proposal. I'll go ahead and save it, and it's good to go. Now with contract, because we just walked through how to find those variables, I'm just going to copy and paste it from our example template. But again, you would just find the column that contains the information that you want, use this column ID, copy it, paste it. Again, removing the $sign. And save. Don't ever forget to save. So now we have our actual templates. What we need to do is populate the template with project data. And our way to do that is a formula column in the projects table. So I'm just gonna move this up a bit so we can see. So we'll go ahead and add a formula column. Let me zoom in as much as it lets me. Okay. So first step of our formula is to find all data associated with the selected record. So this part of the formula is going to be the same for everyone on all of your documents when you create them. Paste this from our example template. Basically what this does, finds all data for the associated record and just holds all that data together. It assigns it to this class to find data, which we'll use in our last bit. Now, step 2 is to actually find the template that we want to populate. So we want to find the proposal template because that's what we want to populate first. So we use a lookup one formula to do that. With our lookup formulas, you first tell it what table you want to look up information in. We want to look up table or information from this templates table here. And then specifically, we want to find it where the name is proposal. We want to pull all that data from the template formatting column. So remember, that was the column we selected for our Markdown widget to read and write to. That's the data we want. It contains all those variables, and that's what we want to populate. So we tell it the table templates. And we just want to find one record. So that's lookup one. And then we tell it what we're matching on, like how do we find the record we want? And we're going to tell it the name. We know we want the proposal template. And then we use dot notation. So we have the dot. We tell it what column we want data from. And that's the template formatting column. I'm going to assign all of this to our variable. It's just going to be template. Keep it simple. And then our final step of our formula is to format the template with the fields from this table. The little added bit here, and as well as fields from the referenced table. So remember, we have customer name and customer address that don't live in this table. That's where we specify that information. So the first part of this formula, pretty generic. Template, which is this variable here, dot format map, that's our Python function, and then find data. Find data, remember, is this class up here. So that has all of our record data, and it's going to format the template with that data. Now I'm going to save it here. It's going to give us an error, but I help explain how to read these errors. Let's go ahead and save that. And now when I go to, I'm going to rename my column proposal. I see I have this attribute error, and here at the bottom, it says the table projects has no column customer name. That's data that we want in our customer table. So we do have our customer column, which is a reference column. So we're going to use that to pull data from the customer table. So specifically, we want full name here, but we also have customer address. So we're going to want the address as well. And so we can modify our formula here to specifically call those two variables out and where to find the data for them. So first was customer name. Now we're assigning that variable to a function. And the function is going to use that customer column, which is our reference column. Using dot notations, we got the little dot. And then what information we're trying to pull. We want the full name column. And then next, our other variable that we need to assign was customer address. And it's going to be the same, similar function. So we tell it our reference column, customer, dot notation. But now this time we want the address. So we select from our list. And that's it. And so now we see no red errors. It seems to be populating correctly. All set. So we created our template up here. We've now populated it with project data here. Now we want to create that preview. So we're going to create a new page. We'll create a dashboard for our proposals with our project table. And zoom out a little bit. So on most of our webinars, we add a table and complain about how it's hard to read all of this data. And so as usual, we are going to add a widget to the page. We're going to use a card widget to help simplify our view. Again, it's going to be the project data, and we're going to select by the projects table that's already on the page. So when we select a project, the card will update to only show data for the selected project. And then we can even simplify the card. I'm going to open the creator panel here and edit my card layout and just clean up the view a little bit. You can rearrange by dragging and dropping. When you click the little eye icon, it hides a field from the view. So some of these details are for the contract details, like contract date, work start date. Those are with contract. And so we'll talk about those next. And then we don't need to see this formatting here. We're going to actually add a Markdown custom widget to display this information. Okay, so now that I have all of this information in a card view, I can hide it from my table view. So when I click into the table, a quick way to hide a bunch of columns here in this table tab, you see our list of visible columns. Click select all and then deselect the ones you want to keep. I just want to keep 3, so it makes it easy. And I can hide the rest. I'll rearrange my widgets. And now it's a lot easier to read. I've got my customer and project name. When I click a project, my card updates. So finally, I need to add my Markdown custom widget so I can see that proposal preview. So I'm just going to add another widget to the page. We're adding a custom widget. Now this time we're selecting projects because that formula column that we just created lives in the projects table, and that's what we want to preview. And again, select by projects. Rearrange it so my Markdown widget is quite large. And then we need to configure it just like we did before. Select Markdown, accept full access, and then we select our content column. And for this one, it's that proposal column we just created. And now when we select a project, the details, well, the project card updates down here. And then these details are displayed in our proposal. So here we see project name is weeding and hedging. That looks correct. Customer is correct. Again, these two are pulling from that other table. So always double check that all of your variables are pulling correctly. The formula column would give you an error if they weren't, but it's always good to double check. And then you would fill out your details in the card. So I just updated the proposal date, and that data will update in your preview. So if I just remove an item, it'll update here. Easy as that. You would fill out the card view here, create your proposal. Again, you can print it or save it as a PDF. Very easy. The last thing I would recommend doing is just naming your widgets to more accurately reflect what they are. So here we've got the first field here is the data table name. So changing that would change the underlying data table. We don't want to do that. We just want to change the widget title. And so this is proposal details. And then I'm going to change this one over here to proposal preview. And last but not least, we want to name our page. Just click the three dots to the right of the page name and rename. Oops. And so that is the proposal dashboard. But we still have one more template to do, and that's the contract one. This one's going to be a lot easier because we've already done all of the work. We're just going to kind of copy paste a lot. So we already have our proposal formula column. I'm going to go ahead and copy that formula and create a new column. And this is going to be the contract column. It's going to basically do the same thing. We want to take this formula, find all the record details, but now we want to find the contract template in the templates table. So I need to update this green text is just help text. So I need to actually update the formula to look for, I gotta type correctly. Look for the record where the value in the name column is contract. And then we're going to populate it with details. Now, because I know what's in the contract table, I know we're going to get an error here. But again, I just want to show you the errors. So when you run into errors later, you know how to read them. So there we go. We see our attribute error again. And it's telling me the projects table has no column customer email, meaning it has this variable somewhere in our template, but it doesn't know what to populate there. So here we have this variable customer email, which we didn't have in our other template. So there's no column in this table. What we want, again, is information from that referenced table, and we just want it from this email column. So right here at the bottom, we just add one more variable, tell it where you want to find the data. And now we have no error. The formula is populating. All we need to do is create another dashboard. So to save you the trouble of creating this again, just go ahead and duplicate your page. Click the three dots, duplicate the page. Now, technically, it is showing proposal details, but we can update it. We know that this project table is going to stay the same, but the details that are shown in our contract are different than our proposal. So I can just edit the things that are existing on the page. I'm going to edit the card layout. Some of this stuff will keep because some of it is still pretty important. But we don't need the proposal start and end date. At this point, we assume that the proposal has been accepted. And then there were a few columns that I'd taken out before that I now want to add back. So under add field, just find the things that matter. Here we want the contract date, we want work start date, and you just move them around to whatever layout makes most sense for your data, and be sure to save it. Finally, we need to update the Markdown widget to actually show us the data from the contract column that we just created. So we just changed content to that new formula column, and now it populates the contract template with our project details. And once again, if I change contract start date, it will update here, and you can update this however you need, and it will be reflected in your preview. Last but not least, we do want to rename our widgets because these are no longer proposal details. This is contract details and our contract preview. So let's say we had a third template, that formula column again, and you could just duplicate the page. It saves you a little bit of time since you've already set up these pages. But that is everything. I know it's a lot of information. If you do have any questions, of course, please put them in the chat. When you go back and you are going through this on your own and creating your own forms using the Markdown widget, feel free to use that proposals and contracts walkthrough as a guide. It's very helpful. Of course, this is recorded, so you'll get an email as soon as the webinar is ended, and it will include the recording, but then I'll be posting it on YouTube as well, so you can always reference that. And then again, in the future, if you're working on this and run into questions, feel free to post to our community forum. I don't know if I'm going to reshare these two messages here. I'm going to post the community forum link in the chat just because I want to leave the proposals and contracts walkthrough link pop-up up. But there is the link to the community forum. Again, in the future, if you're setting up your own forms, feel free to post questions there and we can help you out. And then I'm going to share a link again to the Grist Discord. If there's no questions, I'll give you some more time to submit any questions. But one thing I skipped over at the beginning was our forms preview. And so I would love to show you guys that. But here's a link to our Grist Discord. Great place to go for those interested in a place to chat about Grist or, Grist related topics. But another perk to the Grist Discord right now is that we will be releasing a preview version of our forms for testing soon. And we would love feedback from users. And to provide feedback, you got to join the Grist Discord. So let me find, give me just a second, and I'll show you guys the preview to get a little sneak peek of forms. Okay. Again, if you have any questions on the Markdown widget, everything we just covered, feel free to put that in the chat and I will answer that too. Let me get, okay. So this is just our Net Promoter Score survey template that lives in the template gallery. Just going to use it as the example. It just collects responses from customers. But forms, how it will look, you'll go to add new. We're going to add this on a new page just so we can get a bigger screen of it. And then here under select widget, there'll be a form option. Again, this is coming soon, not out yet. And then my table that has all of this information is all responses. So I'm going to add to page. Now we have this really cool editable form. You have a title. Now this uses Markdown, which, you know, we got a little preview of today. So you would use Markdown here to format this. Oops. And you can edit each of these boxes. You have a header here, a description. You can delete any bit that you don't want. And in your form, it's going to create a cell for any column you have. So some of these you might not want to include in your form and are just for behind the scenes or for your own purposes. Just click the X, it'll hide it from the view. And you can also drag and drop to be in whatever order you want. Now you can also add stuff back, tons of different options. And then you have this little preview button so you can see what the form is going to look like to your end user. And so they would fill this out with their information and submit it, which would then submit it into your Grist document with data. So a little sneak preview. If you would like to be a part of forms testing, again, join our Discord. We would love some early feedback on this. And if you don't want to be a part of testing, but you just want to join our Discord, please feel free. So I don't see any questions. So we can go ahead and end this. Thank you guys so much for joining. I apologize for the technical difficulties between starting on time but not actually starting it, and then the confusion with the actual start time. So it's listed differently. Thanks for sticking with us this month. But we will see you all next month. Have a great day.